What's going on, guys? Tucker over here with the Cedar Homestead, and today we are upstairs doing a little work, not too much work, just a little work in the upstairs game room. So I figured what I would do is show y'all something that's a pretty cool technique, and it will save you quite a bit of money if you can do it yourself instead of hiring somebody else to do it. Most folks don't like to mess with drywall because they feel intimidated by it, but I promise you, hanging drywall and mudding and finishing drywall is actually not as hard as what people make it seem to be. It's actually pretty repetitious, and once you learn the process, it's easy selling. But what I want to show you today is what do you do when you have little holes in your drywall, and let's just say it's in between two studs, okay? Well, some folks would say, we'll go stud to stud, cut the drywall out and patch it. But I'm going to show you something today, and you probably have seen this before if you're familiar with drywall. But I'm going to do something just a little bit different. Now you can do it different ways, but I'm going to show you how I do it. And I call it a cold patch. Is what I call it. So here we go. I'm going to show you. So let's just say one day your kid's running down the hallway, not paying attention, all 6 of them, down one hallway that's not very wide to fit 2, and they have a hammer in their hand, and so they just come, they're like, whoops. So what do you do with the hole in your wall? Because I've actually done this before downstairs. One of the kids slid down the hallway and busted a hole in the wall, and I'm going to show you the very same thing that I did. So now we got a hole. So what are we going to do with this hole? Well, I'll show you. Alright, so the first thing what you need to do is you're going to need a tape measure, of course, because you got to have a tape. I don't have a level with me, but I'm going to do it without a level just for purposes of keeping it as fast as I can do it in this video, as short as possible. So I'm going to use a square. I'm going to have a pencil. Now, I don't know if most of y'all have one of these, but right here, some folks call this an isolating saw or a door saw. I call it a wigger jigger. So this right here is a wigger jigger, and what it does, it wigs and it jigs and it jags and it cuts out holes pretty fast, especially in drywall. So it's So here's what we're gonna do. What you do is you come over here. Let's get the camera a little bit closer so you can see what's going on. All right. So we're going to square our hole off. So you come over here. And all we're going to do is we'll just come over here and we'll just keep the same measurements. You keep the same measurements on your drywall. And we're not worried about going stud to stud. Don't worry about finding studs on holes like this right here. Now, if you get a hole, say your hole is like this big right here, pretty good size hole, I would say maybe you should go stud to stud. But if it's not possible, say there's water lines you don't want to hit or something, you can always put a board, right? You can put a board, slide it in on the inside of the hole, and put a board here down and a board here down, and then you screw your drywall over it. But for this time right here, I'm going to show you what to do with holes about this size. All right. So we come down here, we're going to measure 14 and 14, and then we'll come down here and just to keep it even, we'll go 20. Let's just say we're going to make it 20. You don't have to make it that big, but so. Alright, so we're going to make this hole right here, we're going to make it about 6 inches. Okay, so we'll make it, let's just say we'll make it a let's just go 6 by 6. Alright, so we're going to come over here, we're going to go 14, and then we're going to go 20. And we'll come down here, and we'll go 14, and we'll go 20. Alright, so we got to square our hole off. Alright, so we got the measurements. I know the measurements are right, so mark your lines. And you mark your lines up here. Mark that off. And mark that off, alright? Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut this out. And that's where this little tool right here comes into play. say this hole right here is is behind a door. Say a doorknob is what busted this hole open. I would suggest not doing what I'm fixing to do, a cold patch. If you're gonna do something that it's because of a doorknob that's smacking your wall every time and causing it to have a hole, then you probably need a new piece of drywall from stud to stud, mud it out, and then put a bumper on it to keep it from busting a hole, or a door stop on the trim, or they have door stops to put on doors. But for this reason right here, we're going to say that it's 5 foot up the wall, somebody threw a baseball, and nobody's going to be messing with this anytime soon. So, now we got ourselves a 6. Well, it's close enough. 6 by 6. A 6 by 6 hole. Now how do we fix this hole? We made a small hole into a bigger hole, so how are we going to fix this hole? Well, most folks don't know this little trick I'm going to show you, and it's going to change your life. I promise you. It's simple, and anybody can do it. So let's get to it. So we got our 6 by 6 hole right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 inches to each side of this measurement. So instead of a 6 by 6, I'm going to make it an 8 by 8. And you're like, well, wait a minute now. How in the world are you going to fit 8 inches into 6 inches in this hole? Well, there's a trick to it, and I'm going to show you. And it's just you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. Because we're going to cut out one step, which is the taping step in this process. So here, let me show you what I'm going to do. All right. So let me get my pencil and my tape. So let's measure out. We're going to measure out 8 inches and 8 inches. All right. Now, it don't matter about the bevel. You can have this on, it can be not factory, but it's got to be square, right? You need to be as square as possible because this hole right here, it has to fit kind of perfect for this to work and work well. Now, I'm not saying it's got to be super tight, but it needs to fit where it works decently. So we're going to make it an 8 by 8. All right. I can probably scribe this one right here, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to mark it 8. All right. 8 inches. 8 inches. Now, let's see. 8, 8, 8, and 8. Okay, it don't have to be exactly. You can leave it like, say, if it's 6 by 6, make it not exactly 2 inches. You can make it 7 and 7/8. Make it a hair less. You don't want to fight this thing because if you fight it, it's going to mess it up. You have to start over again. So I'm gonna cut this square out, and then I'm going to show you what I'm going to do on the back side. Alright, so I kind of cut on the inside of the line right here. Instead of cutting the actual line, I cut on the inside of the line. That way it would allow me a little room for this thing to work out to where I don't really have to fight it in. And I've done this quite a bit, so even I measure it and it's still too tight. So if it's like, oh my gosh, it's not a big deal because it can be frustrating for this to work, but this right here will save you a lot of time. Instead of trying to put a board behind this, if you don't have to, you can just patch it with this square right here and this square only. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna shave it down a little bit, get all the burrs off of it that were left, and make sure that I got either 8 by 8 or a little bit less. And then we'll go to the back side of this thing and I'll show you what I'm gonna do. Let's check it out. All right, I got 8, 8, 7, 7/8, and 8. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this square. And on the back side of this square, I'm gonna get my tape measure and I'm gonna measure 1 inch around this whole square. So I'm gonna make basically a picture frame on the back side of this thing, and it's gonna be a 1 inch picture frame. So what it's gonna look like is, I'm gonna come over here like this. Now each edge, I'm gonna pull 1 inch. So I'll go 1 inch, 1 inch, spin it. One inch there, 1 inch there, spin it. 1 inch there. All right, so this is what I got. A bunch of crow's foots on the back of drywall, all of them marked an inch. So I'm gonna have to square these lines off and I'll show it to you again. All right, so this is what we have right there. This square should be a 6 by 6. And you're like, well, why don't you just cut a 6 by 6 and then tape it? Well, because I'm not gonna put a board behind this, remember? So what's gonna hold this in this hole? Well, if you cut this right here on the back side and pop it like you do drywall, pop it, but don't pull this off the front. So we're gonna cut this around with a knife. I'll show you. Then we'll snap it, snap it, snap it, snap it, and then we'll take this back side off and we'll peel it off. But we're gonna leave this on here, and then what we'll do is we'll have a 6 by 6 square with a already made tape to this. It's already here, which makes it more sturdy, right? And all you gotta do is just pop it in the hole. Before you pop it, check it first, see if it fits, right? And then after you see that it's gonna fit, put your mud around here, pop this baby in, run your tape over, and that's your first set of mud. Done. That's all you have to do. You don't have to get drywall tape and tape it after. You don't have to put a board behind it. I mean, this right here saves you that many steps. You take the knife right here, and I'm gonna score it, right? You don't have to stay on this mark right here. You can start up here like this. You can start up on the mark high and come down the mark like this right here. Just come down your mark. So I went from here to here with my knife. Flip it over and do the same thing. As long as you're staying on your line. All right, I went from there to there, all the way down. Flip it like that. All right, from there to there, and like this. All right, I've made all my cuts. So this thing right here should snap, just like drywall does, but we're gonna snap it from the back side. All right, so here we go. Now you got, that's why I cut mine from end to end, because you'll leave these little squares right here. It allows it to bend just a little more back right here. It allows this right here to bend and don't put so much pressure on the joints, because we're not wanting to disturb the front tape. We don't want any tears on this. This has to remain solid. All right, so we come from the back side, and all we're gonna do is we're gonna take it like this right here, pull it off. All right, now we get the long runs. You got to be careful when you're pulling these long runs off. And the better, cleaner snap you get, the less cleaning you're going to have to do after you get this off, and I'll show you. All right, let's get this one off right here. All right, the long one. Got it. Got that one. That one. And that one. And there's one more. Just take your time with it. Don't force it. It will come off. You don't have. It is like just like that right there. All right. Now we've got our 6 by 6 with our mud tape already on it. So what do we do next? Well, You need to check and make sure that you don't see any of this right here. Anything that is not flush mounted with this right here will cause it to bubble out a little bit on the wall. So you're going to have to shave it. Just don't cut through. So what I do is I'll get my utility knife and I'll get my blade like this right here, if y'all can see it. I'm going to try to get it where y'all can see it. I get my blade and I kind of just do that until it gets down to where I'm comfortable, where it's flush with this brown backing right here. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to shave it a little bit. And there's another reason why I don't use the bevel, and I like to stay away from the bevel on new drywall, because the bevel has the roll on the top. So for instance, right here, this bevel has this right here on it. So if I were to try to pull the back off, it's going to have this excess left. I'll have to cut this off. So it's always best to use the side pieces of this. I wouldn't try to use the bevel on it. I would try to just get a square off the side of the drywall without using the bevel, if you could possibly do it. If not, you can just lay that down on the floor and cut that excess tape off before you try to put it in your hole. All right, so I'm gonna keep shaving. I can't see me shave, but I'm shaving. Also, when these right here, make sure that these are square, that there's nothing really hanging over. It's going to obstruct you from putting it in your hole. If you've checked and see that it'll fit, don't worry about it, because if it'll fit, it'll fit. All right, so I'm going to measure mine before I stick it in here. So I got 5 7/8, 5 7/8, 5 and, well, let's say 6, and that's 6. So it should fit, so let's see. Also, make sure you clear everything off your hole right here and make sure there's nothing going to hold this out, because the better this thing fits flush with the drywall, the easier it is that you're going to be able to mud this and finish it. All right. Push the ladder over. Just like that. I think she went in there nicely. That is drywall and tape in one. This thing right here, once you mud this in, is not coming out. This right here is just like if you put a board behind it, and it will hold it just as solid anywhere on your house, no matter what. Like I said, as long as it's not behind a door or somewhere it's going to be taking a lot of smacks back and forth, this right here will solve all your problems, to where you don't have to worry about trying to squeeze a board inside of here behind it and then putting screws in it. This right mudding will hold it. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to go get some mud and then I'll tape it in real quick and show you what it looks like. All right, well, couldn't find my good set of mud tools. So I got some second-rate stuff that I have at the house I usually use when I'm working here. I prefer the tools that I work with all the time, because it's kind of weird to say it, but I'm familiar with them. I know how they work. I don't know about these, but I'll use this as my bedding, and then I have this mud pan, and then I'll come back. What you'll do is, or what I do is, I'll bed it in and run your mud out, and I'll show you, and I'll come back with a 8-inch, and then I'll come back with a 12-inch, and then I'll show you how I do it. So here we go. I'm gonna put some mud in this pan. I found some mud downstairs. I had to open up a new bucket, so I'm just gonna use this one right here. There's not much left in it, but for purposes of the day, this will be more than enough, just to show y'all. All right, so we got our hole right here. It's still there. So what we're gonna do? Well, this is what we're gonna do. Get my knife, because I already know that it fits, and you're just gonna run the mud. All right, so that's how this is gonna be all put together, basically. right here. This right here is going to be what holds this bad boy together, is this mud. And it'll keep this sheetrock from falling out. So if you did it the other way, you wouldn't have this right here. It would just be a square, and then you would have to come back with tape, put this in here, but nothing would hold it. You had to put something behind it. Now you don't have to put something behind it. It's a 2-in-1. So we slide this back in the hole, just like so, and get your clean knife. And just run your knife up. And when this dries, you'll come back and do another coat. So the hole's gone. There it is. All right. Then what I would do is I would come back with a bigger knife. I come back with an 8-inch knife. All we're trying to do is level this out right here like you would a tape and make a big circle. That's what I do. I make a big circle around it, and then I do it with a 12-inch, and then every time I'll fill this hole in when this is dry. I'll run my 12-inch over this right here because there's just a little bevel right here. So I'll run my big knife over this after this is dry, and then I'll come back and do this again and let this dry, and then I'll run my knife over this and let it dry, and then I'll finish it off. The whole thing, I'll come from right here with my 12-inch from center to center all the way around and finish the hole out. This probably isn't the best mud. It's old. Got a bunch of junk in it for sure, but it'll work for what I'm trying to show y'all. There's all this stuff in the mud. There's one thing about it, if you're using mud, and the mud, if it comes in a box, if you get box mud, you know, the mud has the plastic liner on the inside with the mud inside of it, keep your old buckets of mud, clean them out with the lid. And when you buy the boxes of mud, as soon as you open them up, dump that into one of those 5-gallon buckets. Because what happens is, when that mud starts to dry, it dries faster on the plastic liner than it does inside the bag. When that stuff dries, it falls off into your mud inside your box, and then it gets on your wall when you're trying to finish, and it's no bueno. It's no good. It leaves streaks when you're trying to do outside corners and J-mows and stuff. It streaks so bad, and joints it streaks. It's really frustrating for someone trying to mud and you have lines in it. You have to sand that stuff out. So I just planing this stuff out right here. I ain't even trying to make it perfect right now. Alright. And what I do is, after I make my circle right here, I come back and I'll use the edge of my blade and I'll tilt it. So I'm putting pressure on, y'all can't see me. Give me a second. Alright, so it's a tilt method. I'm applying pressure on this end and no pressure on this end. So I'm trying to rake this off, but not this. So I'm tilting my blade and I'm just going around what I just did. On an angle, pulling the mud off on the outside. And after I raked off enough to where I'm comfortable that I can come back and just go around it like this right here. With all them lines and stuff in it. This mud was filthy. All right. So That's how that works. And like I said, once you run this around right here, let it dry. Do the middle. Come back with a 8-inch knife, because you can use a 6, 8, and 12. I'll just use an 8 twice and a 12. But come back with your 12-inch knife, make it bigger, then tilt your blade and get the outside back. Because what you're doing is you're taking the outside off, and then when you put your knife down here and you bring it around, you're floating this out and flatten it out with the front of this tape. And then when it dries, you fill the middle in, like this right here. Come back and fill the middle in, like that. And then by the time you do your third coat, you're done. Fill it in, nothing to it. Simple as that. So for the ones that want to give it a try, feel comfortable enough doing it, I say go ahead, because it's not that hard. If I can do it, anybody can do it. All it is just a little time, a little patience, a little work. And like I said, it don't have to be absolutely perfect, because a sand block can take care of many evils. So those will make that short and sweet. I hope y'all were interested in what I just did today to show y'all how to patch a wall without using a piece of wood. So give me a like if you were interested in it, if you liked it. Share the video, give me a shout out. Thanks y'all for stopping by. And maybe next time we'll do another DIY video. We'll catch y'all later.